Have you ever wondered what happens when an entire generation of men finally wakes up, listens to exactly what they've been told for decades, and simply walks away without anger, without drama, just quiet, resolute departure? What happens when the people who spent years demonizing masculinity, punishing men for existing, and demanding that they leave women alone suddenly realize that those same men took the advice to heart and are never coming back? Stick with me to the very end of this one, because by the time we're done, you're going to see exactly why millions of men around the world are saying the same four words with a calm, unbreakable smile: not going back. If you're getting value from this message already, do me a solid. So smash that like button, share this video with every brother you know who needs to hear it, and hit subscribe so you never miss another drop of this unfiltered angry guy truth. And listen, if you're tired of watching your wealth evaporate because of bad decisions, bad information, or just not knowing how the game really works in crypto, then pause right now, go down to the description, and click the link to Angry's Crypto Academy. That's where I teach men step by step how to buy, sell, trade, and most importantly, protect your assets in this wild digital market. Everything is laid out clear, no fluff, no scams, just real knowledge that can change your financial future. The link is waiting for you in the description. Go check it out right now before you forget. Now let's get into this. After decades of systematically dismantling everything that made the dating and relationship market functional, women collectively are now standing in the wreckage screaming for someone, anyone, to stop men from walking away. They are demanding, pleading, shaming, threatening, legislating, anything they can think of to force men to turn around and come back to a burning house they themselves set on fire. But here's the part that keeps me up at night laughing. Men aren't even angry anymore. We're not raging. We're not bitter. We're not yelling from the roof terrace. We're just gone, quietly building, quietly thriving, quietly protecting the peace we fought so hard to find. And the louder they scream, come back, the further we walk. Let that sink in for a second. For years, decades really, men have been labeled toxic simply for breathing while male. Show basic interest in a woman, toxic. Have boundaries, toxic. Want a family and expect loyalty, toxic masculinity. Expect the mother of your children to actually be a mother to those children instead of treating marriage like a temporary subscription service. Oh, now you're controlling, now you're oppressive, now you're the villain. Men were told in every possible way, through media, through education, through family court, through social shaming, that their natural instincts, their provider nature, their protective drive, their very existence as men was the problem. And you know what men did? We listened. When you tell someone 1,000 times to leave you alone, eventually the smart ones stop knocking on the door. Eventually the high value ones realize their time, energy, attention, resources, and peace are worth infinitely more than begging for basic respect. Eventually, men looked around at the landscape, at the 80-20 dating app ratios, at the divorce statistics that read like horror stories, at the family court meat grinder, at the cultural narrative that painted fathers as disposable, at the endless parade of women proudly broadcasting their body counts while simultaneously demanding a high value man who somehow hasn't noticed the red flags flying at full mast. And we made a collective decision. We walked, not ran, not stormed off in a tantrum, walked with purpose, with dignity, with the calm certainty of men who finally understand their worth isn't determined by how much punishment they're willing to endure to keep someone else comfortable. And now that the economy is collapsing under the weight of decades of bad policy, now that inflation is eating paychecks alive, now that the same government that spent years subsidizing single motherhood and bad decisions is running out of other people's money, now that reality is knocking on doors that used to have independent woman signs hanging on them. Now they're panicking. Now the articles are being written. Now the TikToks are flooding in from women in their late 30s and early 40s with that shaky voice and those wide eyes asking, where have all the good men gone? Now the think pieces are dropping from outlets that spent years calling men trash, suddenly wondering aloud why men aren't dating, aren't marrying, aren't committing, aren't sacrificing anymore. Now the demands are coming. We need to make men man up again. We need to force men back into marriage. We need to stop this toxic MG towel slash red pill slash manosphere content that's teaching men they have options. They want laws. They want social pressure campaigns. They want tech companies to censor the message. They want pastors and politicians and professors to shame men back into the plantation. They want the culture to flip the script overnight and pretend the last 30 years of men are the problem never happened. But here's the cold, hard, beautiful truth they're just starting to grasp. You can't force a man who knows his value to come back and subsidize a system that hates him. You can't shame a man who has found peace into returning to chaos. You can't threaten a man who has already lost everything once and rebuilt stronger into fearing loss again. The horse is out of the barn. The genie is out of the bottle. The dam has broken. Men have seen behind the curtain. We've seen that the strong, independent woman narrative only lasts as long as someone else is paying the bills. We've seen that you go girl culture creates women who are experts at entering relationships but have zero skills at maintaining them. We've seen that the same women who screamed, I don't need a man at 25, are quietly deleting that energy from their vocabulary at 35 when the cats get expensive and the rent keeps climbing. And the craziest part, men aren't even celebrating women's pain. We're not gathering in groups to point and laugh. Well, most of us aren't. We're just living, building businesses, traveling, working out, stacking money, cultivating real brotherhoods, dating abroad where women still understand reciprocity, creating content, mentoring younger men, protecting our peace like it's the most precious resource on earth, because we've learned the hard way that it is. The late, great Kevin Samuels, a man who caught more hate than almost anyone for simply telling women the truth with love, used to warn about this exact moment. He'd look right into that camera with that calm baritone and say, ladies, winter is coming. He'd talk about how the party eventually ends, how the attention eventually dries up, how the options eventually disappear when the beauty fades, but the entitlement stays strong. Well, Kevin isn't here to see it, but he was right. Hot Girl Summer had a good run. 20 years of it, really. 20 years of women being told they could have it all, do it all, be it all without consequence. 20 years of riding the carousel while the culture cheered. 20 years of my truth and live your best life, and you deserve everything while giving nothing in return. That season is over. Welcome to Broke Girl Winter. And it's not just one winter. This is the beginning of a new ice age for modern Western women who bought the lie. Because the men who would have traditionally bailed them out, the stable, provider minded, good men, they spent years friend zoning and you're like a brother to me while chasing the exciting bad boys. Those men have new priorities now. Those men are in the gym at 5 a.m. Those men are building side businesses. Those men are getting passports and learning Spanish. Those men are in therapy, healing the damage done by mothers who hated their fathers and taught them love was conditional. Those men are in monk mode, stacking money and peace in equal measure. Those men heard you when you said, I don't need a man. And they believed you. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. The same women who spent years proudly declaring their independence, who mocked trad wives and pick-me's, who said things like, I'd rather be alone than settle, who built entire identities around not needing male protection or provision, these same women are now watching their biological clocks tick louder than their student loan payments, while the men they overlooked build lives that no longer have space for the drama they bring. And the panic is setting in at every level. You see it in the dating apps where women in their late 30s are expanding their age range to 25 to 55 because the men their age have either checked out completely or are dating 10 to 15 years younger. You see it in the corporate world where women who spent their 20s climbing career ladders are now realizing those ladders don't lead to fulfillment when you come home to an empty apartment and a rescue dog. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. That doesn't care about your promotion. You see it in the family courts, where women who initiated 80% of divorces are suddenly shocked that their ex husbands aren't broken and desperate without them. They're thriving. Like, you see it most clearly in the content being created right now. Women making video after video asking, where are all the good men? While completely ignoring the trail of destruction they left behind. Women demanding that men step up while offering nothing but demands in return. Women trying to shame men for having standards while their own standards read like a unicorn wish list written by someone who brings chaos to the table. But the best part, the absolute best part, is watching men respond with the most devastating weapon in our arsenal: indifference. Not hatred, not revenge, just not caring anymore. That is the ultimate power. When a man reaches the point where your opinion of him, your validation, your attention, your approval means literally nothing, that's when he becomes unstoppable. That's when he becomes truly dangerous to a system that relied on his investment, his sacrifice, his white knighting, his provider instincts being exploited. That we're watching the greatest transfer of energy in modern history. Energy that used to be poured into chasing women, simping for attention, jumping through hoops for basic respect. All that energy is now being redirected into self development, wealth creation, brotherhood, and peace. And women can feel it slipping away. That's why the panic is so loud right now. And that's why the articles are being written at a frantic pace. That's why there's this sudden push to bring men back to the dating market, to marriage, to traditional roles, but only on women's terms, of course. Never with the reciprocity that would actually make men want to participate. They want the benefits of traditional men with none of the responsibilities of traditional women. They want the protection without the respect. They want the provision without the submission. They want the commitment without the loyalty. They want the ring without the honor. They want the captain to save the ship they spent years drilling holes in. But the captains have already jumped ship and are building new ones, better ones, stronger ones. Ones that don't allow the same sabotage that sank the last vessel. This is bigger than dating. This is bigger than relationships. This is the complete restructuring of how men allocate their most precious resources: time, energy, attention, money, and peace. For the first time in modern history, men en masse are asking a simple question before investing in anything or anyone: what exactly am I getting in return that's worth what I'm being asked to give? And when the answer is nothing but entitlement and chaos, more and more men are choosing themselves. That's not toxicity, that's self respect. That's not fragility, that's boundaries. That's not men going their own way out of hatred. That's men going their own way because they finally realized their way is better without the dead weight. The winter that Kevin Samuels warned about isn't coming, and it's here. And it's beautiful. And there's something almost poetic about watching it unfold in real time. The same voices that spent years telling men we don't need you are now, in the same breath, demanding to know why men aren't lining up to rescue them from the consequences of their own ideology. The same publications that ran cover stories celebrating the end of men and the future is female are now publishing panicked op eds titled The Marriage Strike and Why Men Have Stopped Proposing. The same talking heads who mocked stay at home mothers and glorified boss babe culture are suddenly discovering that daycare costs more than most mortgages and that corporate ladders are built out of burnout and loneliness. But let me take you back, because this didn't happen overnight. This was decades in the making. Picture a young man in the early 2000s. He grew up watching his father get destroyed in a divorce he didn't want, watched his dad lose the house he built, lose half his income, lose access to his own children because mom decided she was unhappy. Watched his father become a weekend Disney dad who lived in a one-bedroom apartment with a futon and a mini fridge, still paying child support on a salary that barely covered his own rent. That boy learned early. Provide at your own peril. Fast forward 10 years. That same boy is now in college. He's told that everything natural about him, his competitive drive, his desire to protect, his sexual nature, is problematic. He sits through mandatory seminars where he's taught that enthusiastic consent must be asked for at every stage, while simultaneously being told that if he has to ask, he's already a creep. He watches his female classmates get celebrated for behavior that would get him expelled. He sees the Title IX star chambers ruin good men over false accusations that are later proven false, but the damage is already done. Reputation shredded, scholarships revoked, lives derailed. He learns another lesson. The system is not your friend. Then he enters the dating market. He's 25, has a decent job, stays in shape, has hobbies, treats people with respect, but on the apps, he's competing with thousands of other men for the attention of women who have endless options. He sends thoughtful messages and gets ghosted. He asks a woman out in person and gets called creepy. He watches women his age proudly post about their rosters and situationships while simultaneously complaining there are no good men left. He watches his slightly above average friends get used as emotional tampons and walking ATMs by women who keep 3 or 4 orbiters on standby while chasing the top 5% of men who will never commit. He starts to notice patterns. He notices that the women who say, I'm just focusing on my career right now at 28 are the same ones panicking at 34 when the career didn't love them back. He notices that the women who said, I don't want kids at 25 are suddenly freezing eggs at 38 while posting about how age is just a number. He notices that the women who spent their prime years chasing excitement, drama, and alpha energy are now demanding stability, provision, and emotional safety from men they would have laughed at a decade earlier. And then something shifts inside him. It's not anger. Anger would mean he still cares enough to fight. This is quieter. This is the sound of a man closing accounts, emotional accounts, investment accounts, future planning accounts with women who have proven over and over that reciprocity is not part of their operating system. This is the sound of a man deleting dating apps, not because he can't get matches, but because he realizes the game itself is rigged against him and winning still leaves him losing. This is the sound of a man looking at his father's life, looking at his own options, looking at the cultural landscape, and deciding calmly, rationally, permanently that marriage in its current form is the worst investment a man can make in the West. And he's not alone. Millions of men have run the same math. Millions of men have watched their brothers get financially annihilated in divorce court for the crime of growing apart. Millions of men have watched false accusations destroy lives with zero consequences for the accuser. Millions of men have watched women initiate 80% of divorces while keeping the children, the house, and half the assets, plus lifelong alimony in some states. Millions of men have watched the culture celebrate women who trade up while demonizing men who dare to have preferences. So when women ask today, with genuine confusion in their voices, where have all the good men gone? The answer is simple. We're right here. We never left. We just stopped participating in a system designed to extract everything from us while giving nothing back. We're in the gym at 5 a.m. building bodies that no one gets to touch without earning it. We're in our home offices building businesses that no one can take in a divorce. We're stacking cryptocurrency, buying land, getting second passports, and creating networks of brothers who actually have our backs. We're traveling the world and discovering that in other cultures, femininity is still celebrated and reciprocity is still expected. We're mentoring younger men so they never have to learn the hard way like we did. We're not hiding it. We're just no longer for sale at the price you're willing to pay. And that's what's driving the current meltdown. Because for the first time in decades, women are being forced to confront a reality where male attention, male protection, male provision is no longer guaranteed. It's no longer something you can demand by virtue of existing. It's something that has to be earned through character, loyalty, femininity, and genuine partnership. And most modern women have no idea how to do that. They were never taught. They were taught the exact opposite. They were taught that standards are oppression, that submission is weakness, that loyalty is optional, that femininity is a social construct, that men should love them as they are, while they spend years trying to fix the men they claim to love. And they were taught that consequences are something that happen to other people until now. Now the consequences are here, and they're not abstract anymore. They're in the empty apartments, they're in the frozen eggs that didn't take. They're in the dating profiles with the laundry list of requirements and nothing offered in return. They're in the therapy sessions where women in their 40s cry about being lonely while surrounded by the wreckage of every relationship they torched because they weren't happy. And the most devastating part, men aren't coming to save them from it. Not because we're cruel, but because we finally learned self preservation. Let me tell you about a friend of mine. Let's call him Marcus. Marcus is 42 now, solid career, makes low six figures, owns his home outright, no debt, stays in shape, has a passport full of stamps. 10 years ago, Marcus was engaged to a woman who seemed perfect on paper. College educated, good job, beautiful, great family. They were planning the wedding, picking out venues, the whole thing. And then one day, out of nowhere, she ended it, said she needed to find herself, said she wasn't sure she wanted to be tied down, said she loved him but wasn't in love with him. Classic script. Marcus was devastated, took him years to recover. Fast forward to today. That same woman is 41 now, single, never married, no children. She reached out to Marcus last year on social media, started liking his post, then sliding into his DMs, then sending long messages about how she made a mistake and how she sees things differently now and how she regrets letting him go. And Marcus showed me the messages. You know what he did? He left her on red, didn't block her, didn't argue, didn't gloat, just left her there, staring at those blue ticks, realizing that the man she threw away had built a life that no longer had space for her chaos. That's not revenge. That's boundaries. That's what happens when a man finally values himself more than he values the idea of saving someone who never valued him. And Marcus isn't unique. There are millions of Marcuses out there right now. Millions of men who are good partners, good providers, good fathers in waiting, men who were discarded when they were no longer exciting enough, only to watch the women who discarded them come crawling back when the excitement ran out and reality set in. And every single one of those men is making the same choice Marcus made, not out of spite, but out of peace. And because peace is the new luxury for men, real peace, the kind that comes from knowing no one can weaponize your love against you, the kind that comes from knowing your resources are yours, the kind that comes from waking up every day without the low level anxiety of wondering when the next accusation, the next demand, the next I'm not happy conversation is coming. That peace is worth more than any relationship modern Western women are currently offering. And that's the part they can't stand. They can't stand that men have found something more valuable than their validation. They can't stand that the power dynamic has shifted permanently. They can't stand that the tactics that used to work, shaming, guilt, social pressure, threats of loneliness, no longer land because men have stared into the abyss of what committing to the wrong woman costs and decided we'd rather be alone than owned. This is why you're seeing the sudden surge in articles about lonely men and the epidemic of male isolation, because the narrative is flipping. When women were riding high on endless options, male loneliness was celebrated as consequences. Now that women are starting to feel the chill, suddenly male peace is a crisis that needs to be solved by forcing men back into the dysfunction. But it's too late. The trust is gone. The social contract is broken. And no amount of shaming, no amount of legislation, no amount of man up sermons from people who never had skin in the game is going to rebuild it, because men have seen what happens when we invest everything in women who were taught that loyalty is optional and consequences are for men. We've seen the statistics, we've seen the divorce rates, we've seen the false accusations, we've seen the fry forces, we've seen the deadbeat dad narratives applied to men who pay child support on time but only get to see their kids 4 days a month. We've seen it all, and we're done. This is why passport bros exist. This is why men are going abroad in record numbers. Not because Western women aren't beautiful, many are, but because in other parts of the world, women still understand that relationships are transactions of value, that femininity complements masculinity, that peace in the home is worth more than likes on Instagram, that a man's provision deserves a woman's respect. And the women here are furious about it. They call it sex tourism. They call the men losers. They call the foreign women submissive mail order brides. But what they're really angry about is that men found a market where the product is actually worth the price, where women compete to bring value instead of demanding it, where loyalty is expected from both sides, where peace is the default, not the exception. And the best part, those men aren't coming back to tell the story. They're just living it quietly, happily, building families with women who actually like men. Meanwhile, back in the West, the winter deepens. The cats are getting more expensive. The wine bills are stacking up. The therapy sessions aren't filling the void. And the men who were told to leave women alone finally did, permanently. So when women ask today, how do we get men to commit again? The answer is simple. Become women that men want to want to commit to. Bring peace, like bring loyalty, bring femininity, bring respect, bring something. Try anything to decide to the table besides demands and entitlement. But most won't, and most will double down on the same behaviors that created this situation. Most will keep telling themselves the lie that all the good men are taken while ignoring the good men they rejected. Most will keep freezing their eggs and telling themselves it'll happen when it's meant to happen. Most will keep making TikToks about high value women while living lives that scream the opposite. And men will keep walking further and further away from the chaos, closer and closer to the peace we've earned. Because the greatest plot twist in all of this, the men who walked away aren't broken. We're finally whole. The men who were called toxic for having boundaries are now the most mentally healthy we've ever been. The men who were told they were worthless without a woman are now living their best lives without the drama. The men who were shamed for wanting traditional relationships are now finding them, just not with the women who spent years destroying the possibility. This is the new reality, and it's not changing. Winter is here. And for the first time in decades, men are warm. Let me paint this picture even clearer for you, because we're not just talking about statistics on a screen. We're talking about real lives, real brothers, real stories that are playing out in every city, every suburb, every small town across the West right now. I want you to meet David. David is 38 years old, former military, did 2 tours overseas, came home with medals on his chest and trauma in his soul that nobody ever asked about because man up. He spent his 20s and early 30s being the exact man society told him he was supposed to be. Strong, silent, provider, protector. He got married at 29 to his high school sweetheart who swore up and down she wanted the same traditional life he did. 2 kids in 3 years. He worked 70-hour weeks as a lineman, dangerous job, climbing poles in ice storms so the lights stayed on for everybody else while his own family barely saw him. Then one Tuesday afternoon, he came home early to surprise his wife on their anniversary. Found her in their bed with a guy she met on Instagram. She didn't even try to hide it, just looked him dead in the eye and said, "I'm not happy. I deserve to be happy." Filed for divorce the next week, took the kids, took the house, took half his pension before it even vested, took child support that left him eating ramen in a studio apartment while she posted boss babe quotes on social media from the home he was still paying for. David lost 50 pounds in 3 months, stopped sleeping, started drinking, considered ending it all because the pain of losing his children and his entire future in one swipe was too much. But something happened. One night, rock bottom, phone in one hand and a bottle in the other, he stumbled across some red pill content, then some more, then Kevin Samuels, then Fresh and Fit, then this channel. And for the first time in years, someone was speaking directly to him without judgment, telling him the pain was real, telling him it wasn't his fault for being a good man, telling him that walking away wasn't weakness, it was survival. David put the bottle down that night, started going to the gym at 4 a.m. because sleep wasn't coming anyway, started reading books on finance, stoicism, boundaries, started therapy, real therapy, not the kind that tells men to cry more and apologize for existing. Got his body right, got his money right, got his mind right. 2 years later, David is shredded, owns a small electrical contracting business that clears 6 figures after taxes, has 50-50 custody now because he lawyered up and fought like hell, dates when he wants, women half his ex-wife's age who actually respect what he brings to the table, travels, has brothers who would take a bullet for him. And when his ex reaches out every few months with the "I miss what we had" texts, he doesn't even respond. Because David finally understands something his ex never will. Peace is non-negotiable. That story is being repeated a million times over with different names, different details, but the same arc. Good men get destroyed. Good men wake up. Good men rebuild stronger. Good men walk away forever. And the women who destroyed them, they get to watch from the sidelines as the man they thought would always be there to catch them finally spreads his wings and flies so high they can't even see him anymore. This is why the panic is reaching fever pitch in 2025. Because the economy isn't just bad, it's apocalyptic for single women over 35 who spent their fertile years chasing careers and excitement instead of family and stability. Rent is up 60% in most major cities since 2020. Groceries cost what used to be a car payment. Daycare for one child is more than most mortgages were a decade ago, and the government checks that used to subsidize the independent lifestyle are drying up because there's no more magic money tree. That these women are looking at 401ks that got wrecked in the last crash, at biological clocks that have 5 minutes left on them, at dating pools where the men their age are either broken from the same system or dating 25-year-olds in Colombia. And they are finally realizing that I don't need a man only works when men are still willing to play the game. But the game is over. The players have left the field. And no amount of referee whistles, no amount of rule changes, no amount of screaming at the empty stadium is going to bring them back. I want you to think about the absolute absurdity of what's being proposed right now by the usual suspects. They're floating ideas like marriage incentives for men, tax breaks if you get married, as if men are going to risk half their net worth and access to their future children for a $2,000 tax credit. They're talking about reforming family court. After 50 years of watching it operate exactly as intended, extracting wealth from men and transferring it to women who initiate 80% of divorces. They're talking about censoring manosphere content because apparently teaching men boundaries is more dangerous than teaching women entitlement. They're talking about bringing back shame for single men over 30, as if shaming men has ever stopped working on us when the alternative is slavery. It's delusional. It's like watching the captain of the Titanic demanding that the iceberg apologize and get back in the water so they can keep sailing. And the ship is sunk. The water is freezing. And the men have already built lifeboats made of cryptocurrency wallets that can't be touched in divorce court, lifeboats made of ironclad prenups and offshore trusts, lifeboats made of second passports and plane tickets to countries where women still smile when they see a strong man walk into a room. Lifeboats made of brotherhoods where men protect each other instead of competing for scraps. And from those lifeboats, we're watching the old ship go down. Not with hatred, just with the quiet satisfaction of knowing we warned everybody this was coming. We screamed from the rooftops for years. Kevin Samuels screamed until his last breath. Rollo Tomasi wrote books about it. Rich Cooper, Donovan Sharp, Coach Greg Adams. All of us, we told you. We told you the ride would end. We told you the attention would dry up. We told you that beauty fades, but character endures. We told you that a man's commitment is the most expensive thing in the world, and you were treating it like it grew on trees. And nobody listened until now. Now they're listening, but it's too late because the men who needed to hear the message have heard it. The men who were on the fence have jumped off. The men who are still holding out hope have let it go. And the few men who are still simping, they're the bottom of the barrel anyway. The ones who will take anything with the pulse because their self-esteem is so destroyed, they think scraps are a feast. The high value men, we're gone. And we're not coming back. Not for shaming and not for guilt, not for society needs men to man up, not for think of the children from women who aborted theirs or weaponized them in custody battles, not for anything. Because we've seen what's behind door number 2, and it's peace. It's waking up without dread. It's building wealth that stays yours. It's having brothers who would die for you. It's dating women who bring joy instead of judgment. It's living life on your terms, not as a utility for someone else's happiness. That's the prize now. And no amount of tears, no amount of articles, no amount of where have all the good men gone videos from women holding back tears in their kitchens is going to change that math. The era of men subsidizing bad decisions is over. The era of men accepting crumbs and calling it a banquet is over. The era of men betraying themselves to keep women comfortable is over. We're in a new season now. And for men who understand this, it's the best time in history to be alive. Because for the first time ever, men have options. Real options. Options that don't involve self-destruction. Options that don't require permission. Options that put our peace first. And that, brothers, is the ultimate red pill. Not hate, not bitterness, just clarity. A crystal cold, beautiful clarity. So as this winter settles in, as the articles get more frantic, as the TikToks get more desperate, as the demands to fix men get louder and louder, just remember, they're not screaming because they miss us. They're screaming because they finally realize what we were worth. And by the time they figured it out, we were already too far gone to hear them. Stay strong out there, kings. Keep building, keep walking, keep protecting that peace. Like it's the last currency on earth, because for us it is.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.